What will it take for the Los Angeles Dodgers to go back to the World Series? On today's show, we're not going to talk about that, but we will talk about leadership with the Los Angeles Police Department. Let's get going. Welcome to Courage Today. We have an exciting guest with us today, Los Angeles Police Lieutenant Anthony Espinoza. He's been in the business for 20 years, worked a ton of assignments there in Los Angeles, and we have a unique time to be able to speak to someone in a really large agency that deals with leadership issues that many of us don't have to deal with because of the size of that agency and the size of that department. And we're so glad to have him today. Lieutenant Espinoza, thanks for being here.
Yeah, anytime, Travis. Thanks for having me.
Now, I know it's early there in Los Angeles where you are. You very graciously came in early to talk to us, so we'll get right to it. And we ask every single person the same question that comes on our show. And that, sir, is what is your definition of courageous leadership?
Well, to me, a courageous leader is someone who not only gets people to accomplish the mission, but does it in an ethical manner. No matter what the group is, the organization is, you're always going to have those folks that are maybe a naysayer, but based on your personal core of ethics, as long as you follow those and you're doing the right thing, whether making sure it's ethical, as long as you follow that mission and get people on board and you know you're doing the right thing behind you to what you do, set of ethics, it is as long as or with your organization as well, knowing your department's core values and ethics, if you're running with those, you're going to be all right.
Yeah, Lieutenant, that's extremely important. And as far as law enforcement goes, that's got to be the most important thing that we think about, both before we hire somebody and then, of course, while they're on the job, ethics and integrity. And, you know, any major scandal that we see in law enforcement, whether it be Los Angeles or Tulsa or Oklahoma City, wherever it is in the country, it really starts with that importance of ethics. And I know that the Los Angeles Police Department, like many agencies, take a pretty serious task as far as before they hire somebody to make sure they're really the best of the best. But I know this is a struggle for many, so I'm interested to hear what you do there. You know, an agency just shy of 10,000 officers that covers, 4 million people, and it's the third largest agency in the country. It's just tremendous. What type of steps do you do as far as leadership goes there to sort of ensure that integrity and ethics continues, not just when you hire them, but throughout their career?
Well, as far as from a management perspective, like most organizations, we have a supervisor school where it goes through what a good supervisor is supposed to do. But in our organization, we're really pushing leadership. Our department's reached out to a number of colleges and worked with them to get leadership-focused classes, like the University of Southern California is a partnership with us. Pepperdine University also has a partnership with us as far as like conflict resolution in the workplace. But more importantly, it's just being built around making sure that your people are taken care of. Our department has a Los Angeles Police Department leadership course. It used to be called West Point Leadership, but now it's just LAPD Leadership. But any supervisor, sworn civilian, could join that program. We get different speakers from all across the department and outside the department, police, fire. We actually have candidates. You know, being a large organization, a lot of times we just have our own people, our own organization in our training. But for this training, we even have fire departments from up north and police departments from all over the area that come in. And you have great speakers, and they're talking about things that have happened to them in the past, how they overcame those obstacles. But I think that class for sure is one of the great ones that prepares our sergeants and future lieutenants on how to be a great supervisor, how to reach your people, how to be personable, and most important, how to coach them. You know, a lot of people think that, there's this hierarchy, and just because you're a supervisor, whether it's a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, that as soon as you make that rank, everybody's gonna listen to you. And they may listen to you, but are they gonna follow you? Are they gonna do it because they want to do it, not because you're telling them to do it? And I think mainly some of our leadership courses really help us in defining who we are as an organization and who we should be to our people to make sure that they're doing the best job they can do, not only for themselves, but for the community. And that's the main part, community first. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely brilliant. What you just described is a leadership academy, an internal leadership academy. You're not hiring, large organizations like IACP or whatever else to come in and teach your folks. You know what your folks need. You know what leadership issues need to be addressed in your agency, because every agency has a little bit of difference. And so you were able to build that on your own. And let me just encourage everybody listening, just a couple of things on that, because I love the idea of a leadership academy. I haven't been able to visit yours yet. I'm looking forward to it. But
yeah, we'd love to have you.
But two things with that, Lieutenant Espinoza, is first off, I'm curious to know whether you let people that aren't supervisors yet enter that academy. Like, could an officer with 4 or 5 years on that has an interest in leadership, can they attend? And secondly, well, first let's just talk about that. Who's eligible to go to your academy?
For this particular program, it's usually supervisors and lieutenants. Now, when I took it, there was an officer in that class. They usually try to separate the two, but I don't think our department's opposed to having officers in it. Now, as far as training our police officers, we do have a field training officer program that we offer, and all of our training officers have to go through that, and that trains them how to mentor, coach, guide, and lead our new recruits. And I would say within the organization itself, at the division levels, we have 21 geographic areas, 4 traffic divisions, and the captains at those divisions ensure that the lieutenants and the sergeants, just through regular meetings, are making sure that the mission from the top down is delivered to the baseline officer. But we also support each other, making sure that we're taking care of our people. So we have a real broad spectrum of how to take care of people, whether it's mental health through our behavioral sciences, whether it's peer support groups, but most importantly, as a brand new officer, it's our field training officer program, making sure that our officers are prepared for when they're out on their own. Yeah, extremely important. And of course, that's something that we talk a lot in our seminars about. We obviously talk about in our book about, which is everybody's a leader. And law enforcement has really struggled because we sort of categorize that. We go, we want to deal with leadership issues until you pass a test, until you put some stripes on your arm. And it looks like LAPD is really leading the nation in that they're hitting on leadership from day one. And maybe it's different programs, but it leads all the way up into what your leadership academy does, which is really important. And I want to encourage people listening, because you may be listening to this and you may say, look, I'm not in an agency with 10,000 officers, and we don't have the resources that LAPD does. Well, that's kind of a misnomer, because it's not about the size of the department. It's about the priority of the department. And we've seen leadership academies being conducted in small departments, medium-sized departments. It doesn't matter. It's all about the priority energy you set towards leadership. So you don't have to set back and go, oh, that's LAPD. The truth is, Lieutenant Espinoza, we'll talk about this offline, is there's a lot of negatives to a large agency. Things move in large agencies. So don't look at LAPD and go, well, that's only them. No, actually, if you're smaller than them, if they can do it, you certainly can do it. I agree. And the perks of being in a smaller organization is you are the leader.
Yep.
Every day you are the leader. All your actions, everything you say and do, you're leading those people that are around you. Some of us are charismatic leaders, and we get people to follow us just because we have these boisterous and bombastic type of personalities. But you can also be a silent leader, one of those people that just gets things done, and people will envy you because of your work ethic. Mm-hmm. And the community will follow you because you do the right thing. So every day when we wake up in the morning, we have to recognize not only are we a leader at work, but we're also a leader on our off time. Whether you're volunteering at your church or in a community group or you're coaching soccer, people are looking up to you. And in this profession, you're always on stage. Whether you're at work or you're at home, people see you as a law enforcement officer, something bigger than who you are, like myself being Lieutenant Espinoza. I'm Lieutenant Espinoza 24/7 with my son's friends, my daughter's friends, family friends. They always look at me as someone who's leading, even if I may not see myself as that, but the community sees me that way 24/7. So I think that's an important thing for people to realize who want to go in this profession. You're always on stage.
Man, you were throwing some gems out here, Anthony. My goodness, man. You're going to come into our leadership roundtable. You'll be in with 3 or 4 leaders, and we'll be talking about this stuff all the time. Brilliant stuff. And I know that we talked about this offline because I think law enforcement really lacks mentorship programs. And one thing I've been impressed about what your agency does is you take that very seriously. I know you yourself have, about every 2 or 3 years, you move around and you're doing different things, and you actually work under, I think it's a captain, and he's sort of mentoring you. Tell us about the importance of mentorship there at LAPD and how that has really helped your agency.
I think mentorship's huge. I think it's really huge. It's something that I think everybody should take on, especially when you have a few years. Are going to be here for 100, obviously. So every day our department specifically does have mentorship programs. We actually have a career development unit, and in that career development unit, any officer or sergeant or lieutenant can look at that list and reach out to them and see who they can maybe connect to, especially if they want to get into some type of specialized assignment, or maybe they're captain, so they connect with a captain and they can start speaking with them, seeing what career routes they should take to get where they want to go. I know myself, I put myself out there to everybody, sworn civilian. If someone's wanting to go back to school, I try to gear them and give them the resources they need to go back and get their continued education. If it's to get into one of our leadership programs, I tell them who to talk to that way. But mentorship on this department is huge, and everybody buys into it. And I believe everybody believes in it. So the goal is to train the next generation to do what, people have been doing us for 150 years. So.
Yeah, I know. For those of you who don't know, Anthony and I have known each other long before law enforcement. We knew each other as kids, and both of our fathers were in law enforcement. Your father there at LAPD, mine in Fort Smith, Arkansas. They went to high school together. And we are able to do this job, Anthony, because of what our fathers did before us and for generations did before them.
Yes.
So we have to leave a legacy for the next generation. Many of us are sitting here watching this thinking, well, this is my life. This is what I'm going to do. It's not your life. It's not what you're going to do. There's going to be a time you walk away from this, and we have to constantly think about what are we leaving for the next generation, because that's our grandkids and our kids and our great grandkids. That's the communities we're going to be leaving them. And so it's really important to think about that. So I'm so impressed by what you're doing there at LAPD. And, that's the other thing that leads me to this is I've always been upset because it seems like nationally LAPD gets a bad rap. You got 10,000 officers, 4 million people. Every community in the world lives there. It's the craziest town in the world. And, one officer does, jaywalks. It's national news and LAPD this, LAPD that. But it's the exact opposite. You're a really good department, really a lot of professional people. Higher education is held at a high esteem. You've got partnerships with universities all over that area. And just what you've described me is you're a 1%er. I mean, only 1% of the agencies are doing what you're accomplishing there with your leadership training, your mentorship, all the emphasis you put on risk management. So what are some of the things? I know LAPD has done a lot of improvements with their image lately. And I know especially with the media, they used to kind of let the media run and drive the narrative. And now you guys have sort of taken the reins at that. It's something we talk about a lot in our seminars and in our book, that you've got to be your own messenger. You've got to set your own tone. Tell us what some of the accomplishments LAPD has been able to do to improve in that area.
Well, our departments always strive to have a partnership with the community. Many of those things are community outreach programs, getting out there and working with kids. As we just talked about, generations. If you get out there with the kids and have a connection with them, when they grow up, they're not going to have that fear of law enforcement. In some communities and with some people, they don't have those, I guess you'd say, regular day-to-day positive connections with law enforcement. And we're trying to get in there, embed ourselves, win the hearts and minds of the community, and let them know we're just like them. The only difference is we put on that uniform. We took that oath, and our job is to protect everybody equally, all demographics, all economic, social backgrounds. We're there for them. We're not an opposing or occupying force. But as far as transparency, in today's world, law enforcement is looked at again as an occupying force, or using too much aggression. And the big thing is looking at national news. Don't just look at the LAPD, how LAPD does things. Go out and see what other organizations are doing, how we can always strive to better ourselves through continuous improvement, never being satisfied with the status quo. And one of those things is with our force options. You know, when our department has been looked at for using lethal force, I would say most organizations were closed door, closed-minded. They wouldn't share what was going on. Well, our department has obviously done the opposite of that, and we're being extremely transparent through our video messaging with our categorical uses of force. So our department's going on the front end before any other outlets can give our narrative of what the incident was, and we're putting our narrative out there first, which I think is a great thing. Instead of us being walled off or stonewalling the community, we're actually being open and transparent and engaging and letting them understand through a factual narrative why we have done what we've done through categorical uses of force. And I think getting that message out there early, an accurate message, is vitally important to the health of not only our department, but all departments nationally.
Yeah, it's really a brilliant thing, and I followed this pretty closely because it's one of the things we talk about heavily in our book and in our seminars. Is we've got to put the message out. We've got to sit there. Not that we don't tell the truth. We're transparent and tell the truth, even if the truth isn't great. But you've got to be the one to tell the story. You're the one that knows the story. And Los Angeles Police Department, you guys have gone full circle, because there for a while you weren't releasing body cameras until the lawyers or the DAs or whatever said you could. And so what was happening was the media was just running crazy. And by the time you released the body camera and told the accurate story, that ship was already sailed. And so maybe it's anecdotal, Anthony, but I think what I've seen is when you guys started doing these community messages, and if those of you don't know what they do, and we'll give you an example here on the show, what they're doing is right after a use of force incident, pretty much the next few days afterwards, they will release the body camera footage, and they will talk over that footage and tell the public what they're seeing. And they explain, because, you know, think about it. We're experts at this. We do this job every day, but we have to convince the community that is not trained in law enforcement why we do what we do. And no other profession really has to do that. You know, doctors are the third leading cause of death in America. We talk about this a lot. You know, they kill a lot of people. Now we understand, we have an understanding, because they have to make life and death decisions and high risk decisions and stressful decisions. That sounds kind of familiar, but anyway, they're the third leading cause of death in America. They're killing over 500,000 people a year through medical mistakes. But doctors don't have to try to talk to the public about what they do, because if the public kind of understands, well, I'm not a doctor. I trust the doctors to do what's right because they have the training. Well, law enforcement's the same way, but nobody wants to trust us, you know. So I think what you've done there is brilliant, because you're giving an explanation. And if someone has common sense, they're going to listen to that and say, okay, I get what's going on here. Instead of just a video thrown out there and letting the talking heads talk about it that doesn't know anything about it. It's just really great stuff. I literally think it's shifted your department to a much more positive, and I think you've probably noticed it as well. Have you got any feedback on what you're doing? It's been in this last couple of years that you were doing that.
Yeah, there's been all kinds of positive feedback. The community loves it. Our police commission loves it. It's just one of those things that has to be done. Yeah. And in talking with other agencies as well, they see the value in it. And I know a lot of people have reached out to our department and other departments to see how they could do something similar. Ultimately, we're in a society where there's media at your fingertips. And if you don't get that message out there before somebody else does, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or through, you know, standard media outlets, someone else is going to write that narrative for you. I mean, YouTube, anybody who is at an incident where there was a use of force, or maybe a possible personnel complaint was generated, they get that out there on YouTube immediately. So it's important for any organization to get their narrative out there just as quickly. So I think it's a good thing.
And let me caution our listeners and our viewers, because we spend an entire segment on the media in our Courageous Leadership Seminar. We talk about it in our book as well. And everybody, I see it in the eyes of people that I speak to about it. They go, well, that's because we show one of your examples, Anthony, in our class about how to do this right, because it's phenomenal. And immediately I see the eye rolls, because they go, well, that's LAPD, and they have all the resources, and they have all the money, and they have the special video equipment. And I said, stop. Mm-hmm. I pulled my phone out. And by the way, that's Dodger Blue. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. I pulled my phone out, and I said, listen, they're making these phones today literally like Hollywood cameras. If you
yes, they are.
Phone and about an $80 light, and a tripod and maybe a $50 audio mic, for $300, you're rolling. You know, and if you want to
Yes.
be really serious, you could spend $1,000 and look like the news. So there is no excuse not to do it. We have to do it, and the more we do it, the better. It's just the day and age we are. I think we used to be able to get away with, 20 years ago of, no comment. We're investigating. Everybody just went, oh, okay, it makes sense. That's changed. And because that's changed, we have to change what we do. And I have to applaud you and your agency for what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think we can do it. And like you said, a small organization, we all have unique people within our organization, talented people. I can guarantee that any organization, whether it's 6 people or 14,000 people, has someone in their department who's interested as a hobby of either learning that or they do it on their own. So yeah, like you said, low tech, high tech, whatever it may be, whatever the skill set, there's someone who probably wants to do it in your organization, and the community definitely wants you to do it. So I think it's a good thing.
And let me tell you, the fact that you're watching Anthony and I talk right now, and there's a little bit of post editing that will happen before you watch it, and I did that, says anybody can do it, right? and at the end of the day, if you can't figure it out, call your kid, right? Ask your kid how to do it. So
absolutely,
we know there's some 12-year-olds rolling around the police department that the officers know to help them out. So I think we're using it as an excuse. And we've got to do it because officers are being damaged tremendously because of this. And you guys are a great example. Now, one of the things that really impressed me with LAPD, Anthony, is I visited there many years ago when we were changing some of our uniform stuff and uniform policies in my agency, because you guys have been known to be sort of the cutting edge of uniforms, and you have a whole research group that looks at uniforms. And my agency, if we want to wear something different, I think it takes a month or 2 to go through a committee. It may take a decade at LAPD for you guys to test it out. So yeah, I know it's pretty tight, but one thing that I love there is uniform inspections are really important. What you look like is really important.
Yes.
In a day and age when we're literally seeing the opposite, even in law enforcement, we won't even get in the tattoos thing. I'll just leave that alone because we'll piss off half our audience, right? But we're in a day and age where relaxation and casual Friday is casual every day. That's transitioned into law enforcement. But LAPD has kind of stood up and said, no, this is important. Talk about the philosophy of why appearance matters, why as a leader, enforcing that matters.
I think uniform appearance and just business appearance every day is extremely important. One, we're professionals. You have to have that professional look for people to take you seriously, respect you. That's a personal opinion, but I also think that's a department philosophy. From the day you enter the academy, they teach us that the criminal element or the regular community element is sizing you up. First appearance matters. Tactically, if you're walking up on a car and you look sharp and squared away, your uniform fits the way it's supposed to, physically you're in shape and you're in command of that incident, people are going to take you seriously. And that's in any profession. If you see a doctor that walks in office and they look sloppy, mm-hmm. If you hire an attorney and he looks sloppy or she looks sloppy and they're slob, you're not going to take them seriously. But for our department, we take it very seriously, to the point where even on the uniform shirt, the lapel that's on the top, we stitch that down. Most departments will have that little rise in the collar. If we see somebody with that, we're on them immediately. Hey, that doesn't look professional. You need to stitch that down. A lot of departments have long sleeve uniforms, but some people will cuff the bottom of that sleeve up. That's a no-no in our department. There's no way anybody would allow that to happen because there's personal pride.
What about on the short sleeve? Can you tighten those bad boys up and get the guns going? Are you able to do that there?
Yeah, a lot of people do that. So whether they should or they shouldn't, somebody's doing it.
Yeah, okay. So they're not supposed to, but hey, if they got the arms, you let them show it off once in a while.
Yes, yeah. You can tailor your uniform to show up, to give the gun show if you'd like.
All right.
But ultimately, a sharp uniform is important. We do leave it to the watch commander discretion of patrol division to have a uniform inspection after roll call. And a lot of watch commanders will do that. We do have divisional inspections where the chief of police will come down and the entire command will be there. They'll stand in the parking lot for uniform inspection. They'll inspect your gun, your uniform, everything. If you're an investigator and like a detective, you can wear a suit and they'll do a formal inspection. They'll do a walk through the station. That doesn't happen all that often, but they are done. But we do take our uniform standards very seriously.
Yeah, and that's cultural, because I can speak for other agencies that if they implemented that tomorrow, there would be pure mutiny, right? Because it hasn't been built into the culture, but it could be
Right.
the culture through time, probably through implementing it slowly but gradually, and implement it with the brand new
Yes.
as well. So obviously that's been ingrained in your culture. That's a normal accepted practice. I actually like it, and we talk about this a lot in our training, because if you do the small things right, Anthony, you're liable to do the big things right. Leadership starts with
Absolutely.
small things, and when you see leaders that can't do the small things right, they're not, they're not giving the training to their officers they need. They're not giving good equipment or cars or whatever it may be. The small things, if they're not doing that right, they're not going to be able to handle the high-profile shooting that happens next week. They're not going to be able to handle the press that's lying about them. They're not going to be able to handle the big things. So extremely impressive, Anthony. I know I've had you a long time. You got to get to work, and I know I have to get to work, but this is why I love doing this, because so much leadership training and interviews all around the country, they're not with people on the job. They're just, they're people with knowledge, or people with expertise, but there is a high value in speaking to leaders in law enforcement that are on the job, doing it every day. That's why we do what we do. Lieutenant Espinoza, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today.
Anytime, Travis. Thanks for having me. And I'm glad you're doing this, because you're reaching a lot of people that want to be leaders. And I appreciate everything you're doing for us.
It's great stuff, Anthony. Let's hope Dodgers 2020, and we'll have a great year.
Yeah, go Dodgers.
All right, sir.
Have a good one. Take care.